Okay, good. Okay, we ready? Good evening, councilmen, staff, members of the public. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Herman Cure. I'm the Strategic Planning, Performance, and Innovation and Technology Manager for the town of Miami Lakes. Can you hear me right? It's good? Okay. So today's workshop is about the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and technology-related matters. More specifically, we will go over digital accessibility in terms of ADA. So today's agenda is as follows. We're going to go over some disabilities facts, and we will provide an overview of the current legal landscape. Then we will go over some of the guidelines for content creation and website design. Then we're going to check the current status of our own website. Then we're going to talk about some of the steps that sister municipalities has taken in order to address ADA issues. And then we're going to discuss some of the options that we have here internally to improve ADA compliance. Again, this is digital ADA compliance. And finally, we will open the floor for questions and comments. There is a lot of material that I will be sharing with you, so please stop me at any time. Ask me questions, and if you want me to repeat or clarify anything, just let me know. Over 1 billion people in the world, which is close to 50% of the world's population, have some sort of disability. In the United States, we have close to 50 million Americans that have some sort of disability, such as visual, hearing, motor skills, or learning disability. So why is digital accessibility important? So as we continue developing and implementing innovative ways to provide services to our citizens, it is important that we keep in mind people with different requirements or needs, so no one is left behind and everyone is able to enjoy and access the same level of service that we provide. And of course, it is the law. As it was announced by the federal government in January 2018, Section 508, Title 3 of the Federal Rehabilitation Act required that online documents be accessible to people using assisted technologies, such as screen readers, magnifiers, and mouse alternatives. Mouse alternatives. In general, organizations across different sectors and industries were caught unprepared or not ready to meet these requirements. So the number of website accessibility lawsuits in federal court exploded right after that date, January 2018. The increase in lawsuits from 2017 to 2018 has been over 180%. Now, these lawsuits claim that plaintiffs with disability could not use websites because they were not programmed to use the assisted technologies. These plaintiffs claim or file federal ADA lawsuit in 14 states, New York and Florida being the busiest jurisdictions with 1,471 and 726 respectively. At this moment, I would like to invite Lorenzo to share with us a quick summary of the ADA cases that we have here in the town in particular.
Thank you, Herman. Lorenzo Cobia, Deputy Town Attorney. It's important for us to put in context the reason for us having this workshop today. And the fact is that in the last, let's say, 4 years, there have been at least a couple of lawsuits in where the town has found itself being sued for ADA compliance. The first one was in 2015, and it involved part of our infrastructure. It also involved our website, in which it was not compliant. In 2015, we were required within a couple of years to come into compliance. We didn't, and we found ourselves with another lawsuit last year that we were able to settle with. In both lawsuits, the town expended, our insurance company expended, because they did settle on our behalf, thousands of dollars. I believe in one was $8,000 and the other one was about $10,000, so $18,000 in a matter of 3 years. And as these issues become more and more prevalent, not only in our city, It's also important to note that most cities in Miami-Dade County, most municipalities rather in Miami-Dade County and in the state of Florida were sued, where they were targeted because their website were not ADA compliant. And because they weren't ADA compliant, they found themselves in a similar position as the town of Miami Lakes did. And it is something that is occurring is that as more and more folks rely on the importance of getting their information, whether it's on their cell phone or whether it's on computers, the town's exposure to ensure that we are providing accessibilities for all folks, despite their special needs, becomes more and more important.
Lorenzo, going back to the to New York and Florida, clearly very disproportional compared to other states that are very populated, like Texas, California. And is there something in the state law that makes it easier for tort on this particular issue, or why? What would explain the difference in New York and Florida?
That's an excellent question, Councilman. These lawsuits have nothing to do with state law. They are Americans with Disability Act, so it's federal law and it's federal guidelines. So when we're sued on both lawsuits that we've had for ADA have come through the federal courts. They haven't been filed in the state court. Why Florida and New York is very interesting. Some states have done a better job of making sure that their websites are ADA accessible than others. And it just seems as though Florida and New York have been places where attorneys and their clients have targeted municipalities. Is there a real reason why? I don't have an answer for you. No, absolutely not. No. ADA compliance also involves different, can involve any company that has to make sure that their product or their website is accessible to all. You've had a case recently where Domino's Pizza had a huge lawsuit that they just settled a couple months ago, and it was related to their app on their, it was an iPhone app. The iPhone app was not ADA compliant, and they basically had to take it down. You have other stores that have had similar issues with ADA compliance. So no, it's not limited to municipalities, but this chart is specifically talking about, or this comparison between Florida and New York is specific to municipalities.
Okay.
But good question.
Excuse me. Are you able to give some examples of the lawsuits that have taken place and what has been done to rectify that? And what issues have we been running into?
Sure. Do you want me to answer that now? Because I know we're going to answer it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why don't we wait till the end of the presentation, and then some of your questions may be answered.
Is that okay?
And then if not, we'll come back to you. Small businesses,
You have to be a business of a certain size in order to be able to have to comply for ADA, but large, right, 50 or more employees. But in the case of like Domino's Pizza, for instance, it definitely met that criteria. So yeah. But that's a good point.
large or small.
All governmental entities must comply. Yes.
Thank you, Lorenzo. So, as all of us has probably already experienced, with just a few clicks, we can find agendas and documents in our website that are dated back 15 years ago. Now, not all those documents are accessible under ADA, which means cannot be interpreted or read by assistive technologies. Many of the documents that we have are scanned images, basically a snapshot picture of the document. The actual text in these scanned images cannot be read straight away by the assistive technologies. In order to do that, you have to go to a prior process known as OCR, the optical character recognition, where text is extracted and that is tagged into the document, so the assistive technologies are able to read that text. However, there is a limitation also on the OCR, on the optical character recognition software that we're going to mention shortly. I'm going to give you an example. This is a typical a document found in our website, which is a scanned document. The text that you see flagged in red can be extracted by the OCR software. However, there is a limitation in detecting certain objects, such as pictures, artwork, or signatures. In such cases, a person working through the remediation of that document will have to interpret what that object is and actually input that information into the document. And this is also known as adding an alternative text to the document. Example of this, the signature block that we see here. In this case, a person working on remediation, once the person go through the OCR, optical character recognition, so the text is extracted, then whenever the object is unidentifiable by the OCR, the person has to manually input that information, interpret first what it is, and then add in that information. So for example, in the case of these signatures, once the person runs the OCR, then we have to go to that signature and input Town of Miami Lakes, Mayor Manny Sid. So that person has to actually manually input that information. Same with the town clerk. So she has to write town clerk Jenny Wanso, and so on. Yes, sir.
So every time we download a form, this has to happen.
Yes, if it's something that has been scanned, like a document that we scan using a scanner, you have to run this OCR. So the OCR extract what is text and tag that into the document. But there are things that OCR is not capable of recognizing, such as picture or graph or signature blocks.
Okay, so where it says signature of town attorney, can't we just add that underneath the town attorney line without having somebody to physically go input it every time? Can we already add it to the document so when it's scanned in, it already identifies the signature?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Okay, so you have the line to sign, and then it says Manny Sid Mayor,
Yes.
right? Can we put on every document already signature of the Mayor Manny Sid already attached to the document so that somebody doesn't have to go physically into that document and reload it? So instead of doing it secondary, it's already attached to the form every time we download it.
Yeah, the thing with that will be some sort of like a digital signature that we add onto the document. The thing with the documents that are being scanned is that there is it's a picture. There's nothing in there. You have to, every time that you go to the document, you have to go through the process. Unless you create those with a signature, maybe you can add that one.
Yeah, for the future. I mean, now I know we're having a complication because we're behind, we're catching up, but
And actually, you are in the right path. One of the things that we're going to talk about is not only to work on remediation, but get in compliance from the get-go. That way you don't have to go back and remediate the document.
right. So this is labor intensive.
Very
Very
labor intensive.
Yes, it's expensive.
Expensive and
Labor
very
intensive
time
means
consuming.
expensive.
Yes.
So time consuming, of course, it's necessary, and that's huge. But you've really opened my eyes to a whole new aspect of ADA.
Yes.
We think of ADA as sidewalks and doors, and we just did an ADA door today that we did an opening for, and this is a whole different aspect that wasn't brought to my attention. I'm so glad that we're having to work.
Yes, this is fairly new for again, many industries, companies, everyone. Another example would be, let's say that you have a document that have that beautiful picture. Again, the OCR doesn't know what is that. Then a person doing the remediation have to go there, interpret what is that, and then maybe put picture of a hiking trail line with beautiful flowers, something like that. So we have to interpret what is that. And to answer your question, yes, this process of converting to OCR, labeling images needs to be done to every picture, every logo, every chart, every graph, every signature block, on every document, on every page, ever created and available in our website. So agendas, budget, planning, zoning meetings, procurement, contract, everything that we have in the website that is PDF, we have to go through.
How
this
far
process.
back do we have to go?
We're going to talk about that one too. We actually did some exercise to answer that question. So. The second part, and I think to answer her question, is what are the things that we need to do? So one is the remediation of documents. But in addition to these out-of-compliance documents, the actual website, the structure, the design of the website has to be also in compliance with ADA. This means like the color, the text size, the contrast, the navigation, the links, the tags, amongst other features, will have to be in compliance with ADA. This is important. The federal government has not officially adopted website designs or standards that comply with ADA. There are guidelines and international standards that are being used by web developers. Some of these standards are the WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which are guidelines developed by international organizations around the world. However, we have to note that the Department of Justice recognized this standard as the international benchmark for web accessibility. And this is a very important point. The revised Section 508 of Title III by the Rehabilitation Act use or is based on this WCAG. So even though it's not officially adopted, they're using that as the base for anything related to ADA. So in summary, it is not only the non-compliance documents, but the actual websites that are driving us, the town, cities, counties, federal agencies, and even private organizations to make big changes. Some of these changes are from fully redesigning and developing a new website, converting to OCR, all documents, removing documents from the websites, and making them available only upon request or after being fixed. These steps and others are being taken by organizations nationwide to ensure compliance with ADA and to avoid further litigation. Any questions?
So to address the Vice Mayor's concern, we currently have a policy that if somebody requests a document that has not been transcribed into OCR, we can transcribe it upon request.
Yes, very limited, but yes.
And that mitigates our exposure on the ADA compliance.
Yes and no. I think Lorenzo will be the best to answer that. My understanding is whatever we have available for any person have to be at the same time available for any user with any requirements. So if it's there for a person with no disabilities, have to be also be able to be accessible for a person with any sort of disability. So saying that, okay, I'm gonna fix it for you, and then you have to wait, I think there's an issue in ADA right there.
So there's an organization that I serve on the board of, it's called Disability Rights Florida, which actually protects people with disabilities and actually does a lot of the systemic monitoring and supervision. And they covered this issue at our last board meeting. In particular, they talked about certain solutions like toolbars that can be inserted into the website that then allow all these color format changes. So if you're colorblind, text sizes, text-to-speech. And the websites seem to have a patch or seem to have a solution as long as the website is coded to make sure that that information is working flawlessly, so to speak, with the toolbar. The issue is when you upload data, like you said, large
Correct.
PDFs, and I was asking Tony, he's a professor at probably one of the greatest universities in the state of Florida, and he says that in the university they have an entire department that dedicates itself. Realizing that maybe we don't have the resources to have an entire department, I brought up the question at our last board meeting, and they talked about compliance or third-party compliance companies that appear to give you some type of remediation or at least cover to comply with this. Can you talk about those third-party compliance
Yes,
providers?
I'm going to go over in some of the slides, but just to answer very quickly, there are tools definitely that help you. There are some tools that are not required by ADA, but if you like to be more proactive, like for example, you want to enhance your website to have certain toolbars so it can make contrast better, size better, but that's not required by the ADA. That's, a person is the one that needs to bring those tools to their computer. If we provide those, it's going to be more nice to have. But those tools just address some sort of the ADA issues, but not entirely. So depending on the how well developed, how well designed, or how robust is that toolbar, then the better you will be. But it's not like a one fix and gets all done. There are many types, some free, some that you will have to pay. I think this is what I just talked. I just skipped that slide. Basically, again, let me just recap. The Department of Justice, right now, there is nothing official adopted by them. They are using some standards that are the international standards, but these standards they are using to base their Section 508. Now, I would like to give you a quick status of our website. Our website was developed in 2012. On June of last year, it went through a remediation and auditing process, which resulted in 0 nonconformities, basically no issues with our website. Now, just a few weeks ago, 2 third-party website auditing firms performed independent audits to our website. Both firms' audits found more than 250,000 issues and risks associated with the design and structure of our website and content. Now, these results should not surprise us, as hundreds of documents, links, images are added into our website, and they could be missing some of the complex elements required by the Section 508. Now, I have to highlight, or we have to highlight, the great efforts that our clerk's office and communications are doing trying to convert OCR and labeling as many simple documents as possible using basic tools, informal training, and limited resources. So, yeah, they're doing a great job. Now, in addition to the ADA issues that we have, it is important to note that our website is lacking key features required for providing a good user experience, such as easy navigation, usability, and most importantly, a better mobile small device interface. This is known as responsive design. So if you go to our website using your cell phone, you will notice that our website does not adjust to the small screen. You will have to zoom with your fingers, and then you have to try to navigate to that menus that were not intended for small screens. As a reference, in this picture, you will see 2 cell phones. One is showing the town's website, and the other one is showing the City of Miami. The City of Miami is a website that has been designed for both desktop and small devices. So you will see that it's a responsive design. Any questions on responsive design? No. You guys check the website, you see it? How it looks like with the cell phone? It's very tiny, you have to zoom, the menus, yeah, it's hard to navigate. Now also I want to, please come in. Yes? Also I wanted to share with you some quick statistics. Over the last 3 years, 350,000 sessions were opened from our website. Out of that, almost in a perfect split, 52% were open via desktop and 48% were open using small devices such as cell phones. When these sessions were open, 44% of the visitors entered the site using desktop, and they left right away. This measure is called hard bounce rate. And if you see on the cell phone use, 70% of the visitors who entered the site using cell phones left right away. The expected range of a hard bounce rate is 50% or less. So we can see that people, when goes to the website using cell phone, the rate is way too high, 70%. Similarly, the average session duration, the other graph, is telling us a similar story. Visitors are using cell phone in a great extent to access our website, but they leave right away because the site is not designed to provide the expected level of service using a small screen such as cell phone. The last graph at the bottom shows the world trend of accessing website through a small device. As you can see from the years, the trend has continued to grow, accessing website through a small device, up to the point that in 2016, it surpasses the desktop interface. Any questions on the small devices? So what steps cities and counties close to us has been taken to address the ADA digital issues? We interviewed around 10 different cities around us, and we got the results of the main ones on this slide. Almost all of them has gone through the process of completely redesigning and redoing their website in the last 2 or 3 years. All of them, with the exception of the county, which has its own website development team, brought up specialized vendors for developing the new websites. 5 out of 6 of these organizations did not remove the content from their website while they were working on remediation, mainly due to transparency concerns. I want to emphasize this point. 5 of 6 kept the content on the website while they're working on remediation. The concern is, do we remove that content while we remediate, or we leave it in there? And the one concern was definitely transparency. The top priority for these cities has been training all staff, or at least one person per area, regarding remediation, giving priority to the following teams: procurement, budget, legal, and finance. Some of the cities have even created permanent positions to remediate documents. In addition, cities are ensuring that new documents are being brought into compliance prior to uploading them into their website, the point that the Vice Mayor just brought up. There is an exception to some of those documents, such as the budget, the CAFR, and similar documents containing complex graphs or tables. Some of these cities have opted to send these documents, complex documents, to specialized remediation services, which could charge $3,000 for a single 145-page document, such as a budget. Also, a top priority for all these cities has been the acquisition of new tools to help them convert to OCR at higher volumes, to process faster and more accurate labels and tags, and to perform routine audits to the content and website. So what options do we have as a town? And this is to address the question. Step number 1, remediate the content. We can do that in-house, using a third-party services, or a combination of both. Now, for instance, to remediate our content at the pace and resources that we have, which is a part-time person, it will possibly cover some of our basic documents, such as minutes, ordinance, as they're being developed. But all our documents, such as budget, contract, master plans, definitely will bottleneck through the process. And again, we have the option of either send some of these documents to a third party, or to increase our manpower to work on this. The step number 2 will be remediate our website. We could allocate time and effort to get a brand new website that will not only address the ADA issues, but also will provide a better service. Another option would be acquiring a JavaScript overlay, something similar that Councilman Collazo was mentioning, which is, there is one widget, which is a code that goes into the website, mask the website, and make it temporarily accessible on the ADA. I guess the not good part about this one is, once you got out of the contract with this company, then the website goes back to the way it was. And step number 3 will be acquiring better tools moving forward. Some of these tools are auditing tools to ensure that our content is being remediated correctly and met the standards. In the same way, tools for auditing our website to ensure it's kept in compliance. And lastly, we will need to work on developing and implementing processes and procedures to ensure Thank you. To ensure new documents are created in compliance from the get-go. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, in order to have a better understanding of the efforts and initial investments required, we have analyzed the behavior of our data and we found out that we have an estimated of 4,000 PDF files, which is equivalent to 600,000 pages in PDF of simple and complex documents. To have all those remediated at once, we will require to engage a third-party services. The price tag for this remediation will be in the range of $8 to $10 million. Now, the reality is that the vast majority of our digital traffic goes back no more than 3 years. This means that content that is 4 years or older is minimally or not at all being accessed, searched, or downloaded from our website. So to answer your question, Vice Mayor, from 4 years and older, we don't see any traffic. With this in mind, we're recommending the following approach. Remove content that is 4 years old or more and concentrate our efforts on the last 3 years. Develop and acquire a new website. Train personnel on ADA guidelines and remediation tools. Prioritize content remediation of no more than 3 years old, and the rest of the content be removed from our website, and work on remediation, the older content, by demand or at a lower pace. The breakdown of this suggested approach is shown in this table. Our initial investment to bring the town into a better position regarding ADA compliance is in the range of $200,000 one-time cost or investment, and $80,000 as a recurring cost. This initial investment should help us cover part of the current hot issue, which is the content and website. However, a comprehensive digital accessibility and inclusion assessment must be followed in parallel or after this initial phase to address accessibility issues with our apps, our platform, and digital interface. So not only our website, but anything else that we provide digitally, we have to do an assessment and see how we comply with ADA. Lastly, I would like to share a statement from an experienced ADA compliance web developer. It goes as this: ADA compliance is not a pass-fail test. Rather, it is a spectrum. A website can be more compliant or less compliant. The more compliant a website and content are, the better user experience for all users, regardless of their individual abilities, and the lower the risk there is for a demand letter or losing a lawsuit. This concludes our presentation, so now we open the floor for questions. Yes, sir.
So 190,000 upfront one-time costs, would those be spread out over a 2 or 3 year period? Or no?
Yes and no. All depends of our, I don't know the right term, I'm trying to be legal here. How much exposure are we willing to take? ADA is just about, you know, if you get it, you're going to be out of compliance. If you want to fix it right away, it costs a lot of money. So it depends how we're willing to take that risk.
In reference to risk, if you're working to become ADA compliant, at that point,
Yes.
it helps, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes
so,
and no.
So,
I guess
so,
I see
right.
it.
So, I mean, for us to come up with a,
Yes and no, yes.
Flipping on over. The problem is that it's pretty much, and I think you did an excellent job of addressing that earlier on. Am I speaking? Yes, all right, good. So I think Germán did an excellent job of addressing that earlier on. The federal courts have been very good at telling us what compliant and non-compliant should be. It's either it's accessible or it's not accessible. They haven't given a very good guideline as to the levels of accessibility, okay? And pretty much it's almost a pass-fail test. Either it passes and it's accessible or it's not accessible. What you do see, though, I think, in many of these cases, is that many of them are not taken to trial. They're settled before. And so what this town does now to remediate it is helpful to negotiate the actual damage, or let's say, or the actual fees that are going to be incurred. So you're able to kind of settle earlier if the town is doing things in furtherance of it versus not doing anything. And I think also from a point of view of insurance, into our insurance company, it's important too, because that's something else. Insurance company, including our insured company has met with us and told us that they would like for us to be taking steps to make sure that, you know, we are compliant from a technology point of view. And that's something where we're going to, the onus is going to be more and more on the city to make sure that our website is compliant.
We're not going to keep covering our settlements over for years and years.
Yeah, I mean, if we're not compliant and we're not working towards it, of course, insurance is going to get higher, and they're going to cut us off.
So from the insurance point of view, I think it's important that we definitely start doing something.
Not that it's material to our compliance, but was that a town resident that was trying to access our website? No.
It doesn't have to be.
I know, I understand it doesn't have to be, but sometimes when you see these types of lawsuits and you see certain areas being disproportionately more affected, are maybe these sometimes opportunities that maybe lawyers enter into with somebody with a disability, or you haven't seen that type of pattern?
I don't want to make an assumption that a colleague is doing something inappropriate in
No, I'm not
basically
saying inappropriate. I'm saying, is there a
targeting
pattern?
cities, but there is a pattern. It's
There is a pattern.
There were 3 litigants. One was covering mostly the north of Florida, one was covering the middle of Florida, and one was covering the southern Florida. The gentleman name is Gil, Juan Gil. He is the same litigant that sued the town of Miami Lakes, city of Coral Gables, city of Hialeah, Pinecrest, Doral, Bar Harbor, Davie, to name a few.
Okay. With respect to what, thank you, that actually also puts it in context, at least for me, that it wasn't one of our town residents actually trying to download a document from 3 years ago, and you know, it seems like it's somebody is trying to address this issue systemically using tort, and there are people that do that. But with respect to the website, it seems like that remediation can happen sooner rather than later. It's just an issue of funding it.
Yes.
It's not the same as going back dating all the documents in OCR.
Website, to have a brand new website to ensure that it's ADA compliance, just the website, the structure, the layout is always an easier process, but it takes between 8 to 12 months, more or less, because what happened is, and I was, you know, blessed to be able to talk to the different IT guys and web developers on those cities. And they say, like, I think the beauty about going through a new website is you're going to also go to all the processes. You're going to do a full revision of everything. So you will update your processes, your procedures. So that's why it takes a long time. But it's a pretty straightforward process. You have your website. I mean, these vendors have templates already ready. So it's not like you can go very fancy, but you can also go with like templates, which is also less costly.
The reason that I'm asking the question is more aligned to what I believe the manager was alluding to. When we have big capital improvement projects, or we have big projects that we're trying to take on, taking small bites at a time. So yeah. I didn't know if maybe there was a phased in or a multi-prong approach that would allow us to, rather than looking at this, you know, $170,000 investment, look at it at maybe $60,000 a year, or, you know, 3 phases of $60,000. Have you tried structuring something like that?
Yes, and again, goes back to maybe the same answer is like, how much are we willing to be exposed? So the sooner we fix it, the less exposure we have. We can spread in 2 or 3 or even more, but I think that depends on how much exposure we're willing to take. Am I right? Or?
Yeah, and I think that adding to what you just said is, and we see this happening as a town continues to grow, is that we want to be more and more transparent and put more and more information on our website. So it's not only about going back and remediating it, it's we're moving forward, and we're moving forward pretty fast. So it's not only about fixing it, it's about what are we going to do to make sure that all the information as we continue.
But right now we have, from what I heard, we have a 0.5 FTE that can take care of agendas, that can take care of the day-to-day type of documents. They cannot take care of the complex documents. So if we were to start clean slate, get a brand new website up, and as we update information, short of the complex documents, we'd be in compliance.
On content, we might need to have like a full-time person. If you go to the table, can you go back to the table? It will be like 1 full-time employee, no part-time. And to address at least the first 3 years, we might need to have like an additional person working to us. It could be on a temporary basis. but will be like almost 2 people to address. I think we estimated like around 8 to 10 months to remediate all those documents, simple ones. We're talking about the agendas, the ordinance, resolutions, what else we pull, minutes, special calls, workshops, so everything that goes into our website that have a PDF document will have to go in there. So yeah, it would be almost 2 people working for straight 6 to 8 months at least, just on the simple documents, not on the complex one. The complex one, everyone, even the county, they are struggling how to address that one because they are expensive, they are complicated, and they're definitely not doing it in-house. They're sending that outside. But it's a big ticket item. Again, the budget, we actually sent one of our actual documents for quotation, and the budget proposal was 145 pages, and they charged $3,000 just for that document. So imagine if you multiply by 4 of those documents in a year, plus the CAFR reports, we're talking good money. We said more or less for a complex document in a year by year, probably we would looking $40,000 to $60,000 just to keep remediating these complex documents. But the point from the Vice Mayor, moving forward, as we become more familiar and more trained, the ideal is that you become, you can do those complex documents. Not right now. You will have to get trained and know what the ADA, the guidelines, the structure, so you have to require some specialized training in order to do that. But as we move forward, we'll be getting at that point.
So that might be something that we need to look at when we put an RFQ out. You know, are they ADA compliant on the report that's coming back? Maybe we can, you know, when we put the bids out, the report that they send back, you know, so that we don't have to do it, have the company issue, like the CAFR and everything else, has to come back ADA compliant.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And
One of the things
that's
that
something that we need to look at the future as we're putting out bids and contracts, saying, you know, as you bid this and you go through this contract, you know, one of the qualifications is your company has to have the ADA compliance so that it already comes to us ready for us to download into our system. It's something to look at for future bids as the town continues to move towards this ADA compliance. You know, it's something that maybe we can address that way, and that it'll give us a little bit of a more advantage throughout the future. Although I'm sure it's going to come out in the end, we're going to pay for it because the company's going to increase their increase their cost.
Probably.
So we're going to have to outweigh what they're charging for ADA compliance as compared to what it would cost for us to convert it. So
I guess the objective for tonight was not necessarily to give you a final detailed plan, this is it, please endorse it. It's mostly to an awareness for the council that this issue is out there, that we're working on it, we're looking at developing plans, and sometime between now and budget season, we're going to have a plan in place and say this is, and it's going to have some exposure. And Lorenzo's probably, you know, wanting to throw something at me. It's probably going to, because if without being able to tolerate some exposure, then it's going to be cost prohibitive for us to come into compliance. Or we could just be non-transparent and just take everything off the website, and then we have no exposure, right? And I don't think that that's, our residents have become accustomed to having access to a lot of stuff. And that was great information that Germán brought out, is that our residents, or not only our residents, anybody who's tapping into our content is not tapping into old content. So now we can say we feel comfortable that old content we can take off the website, and if they need something that's 5 years old or what have you, we can get it through the clerk's office as a public records request. We can make it ADA compliant, that one document, and then pass it on to them. But the likelihood of that, the occurrence or the frequency of that is very low, so that's a calculated risk that we're taking. So sometime between now and the next budget compilation season, we're going to develop a plan and give you some kind of a roadmap to how we're going to get there, and how we're, you know, what we recommend to the council with regard to exposure, costs, and everything moving forward. So.
Yeah, and going back to to the issue of transparency, I would completely be I would not be in agreement with starting to remove material from our website, especially knowing the background that this was originated not because a resident didn't have the access to the document, but rather because through tort action, somebody is trying to either gain monetarily or create awareness to this issue, right? Because the way you described it, it seemed there's maybe a couple litigants throughout the entire state creating a lot of issues for a lot of municipalities. Well, that led me to the other thing. Since that's the case, I'm pretty sure the Florida League of Cities may have or may be working on something. I don't know if you guys have reached out to them, but being that so many municipalities have maybe come into this issue, this must be a priority for them, no?
So the issue in Florida is definitely prevalent, and I can tell you as far as the Miami-Dade County League of Cities, they put a seminar specifically on this for the attorneys at the Florida Municipal Attorney Association. This was the first topic discussed during this year's conference, and it took up several hours where it was addressed. The problem is, as we discussed earlier, the complexity of the law is that, or the difficulty with the law is that the fact that there are no really set guidelines as to what the website, it's pretty much a pass-fail type test. And so different cities are taking different approaches. Some are really taking the approach of removing things offline, basically putting their, please contact the clerk for the information. If you need some special need, please, advise the clerk. Some are taking the approach of removing old data and then trying to come into compliance. Some are taking the approach of not doing anything at all. I would note that while this particular litigant, you're absolutely right, was someone that was preying on cities, we did have, in 2015, I don't believe that was the case. That was somebody who actually was visiting the town, and so it led to an issue at one of our sites, and then it also included the website as part of that case. So it's not only one, at least for our town, there's been a couple.
So to the point of removing data, I think, you guys have brought forward at least a metric that sounds reasonable, right? Like you just leave stuff up that's 3 or 4 years because nobody's accessing stuff all the way back. But if you need it, you can obviously make a request for it and get it. And that's what I was thinking in my mind. I'm trying to play this out on how we could comply, realizing that, when we have to budget $190,000, you either are going to be put in a situation where you're increasing taxes somewhere or you're decreasing services in other places. So trying to mitigate that, that's why I was looking at that phased-in approach. So being that you almost have to bite the bullet, so to speak, at some point in time, I would tell you that because of the way this has come up, that the Florida League of Cities must have at least a bunch of us, and what I mean by a bunch of us, a bunch of other municipalities trying to work through this same issue, that there may be something that we can compel them, right? If we say, hey, look, at municipality X and municipality Y and municipality Z, we all have the same issue. I don't know if there's a way that we can pool our resources, kind of like a lot of different professions do, to maybe address this issue. And I wouldn't know that, but I can definitely reach back out to them. I know that you have access to them.
And we'll explore, what other, and Germán has done some of that, right? Because he brought up and he put information there about other municipalities and the way they've addressed it. And I guess that's really, because ultimately, you either got to address it or you don't. It's not like the League of Cities or the City Managers Association or anybody, and no entity like that is going to have a magic pill that's going to solve all this and make all the content and website compliant, for no cost. It's going to cost us money, and even if we do a phased-in approach, it'll just be less of an impact, less of a budgetary impact. But no matter how you slice it or dice it, it's going to be a new financial cost that we haven't had in the past. Even the figure up here that Germán shows, even if we finally get the upfront cost covered, the recurring costs are still, $76,000. So there's going to be, it's going to be the new normal, that this is going to be something we're going to have to continue to budget for.
Yeah, and with respect to the Florida League of Cities, they may just have vendors that are already doing this for municipalities and are already going through the same issues that we are. So the cost savings that maybe some other vendor that's new to this type of space may be generated, and they may package something together. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud because I've seen it happen in other places, like healthcare systems. They usually gravitate to 3 or 4 different vendors that do this for them because they do it exceptional with medical records, and they know the ins and outs or the nuances of those particular records. I would say that municipalities may have the same niche market, so to speak, in this space, and maybe we can be led there by the Florida League, which may be encountering,
No, yeah,
clearly is encountering
we'll
this issue.
explore all that, yes. Any other questions or any other comments?
Great job, Christina. She's our remediation person. Well, that concludes our presentation.
Hey, one more
Yes, sir.
question. I'm sorry. So I understand what Councilman Collazo was saying about opening up ourselves by removing content that's 3 or 4 years older. But we can can we put a disclaimer on the site and make it compliant saying, any other issues, please, generate your public records request. I mean, we have an anonymous public records request already through our clerk's office. Put it through there, and then we'll make it ADA compliant. And then that way we're covered on liability. I mean, I don't think we're ever 100% covered on liability anyway.
Yeah,
There's
you
gonna
will not
a
be able to be
loophole, and
100%. Nobody's 100%.
And right, and every judge sees it different, every attorney sees it different, and everybody finds an angle. So, I mean, working to that aspect, I think it might be something that we can try to do.
The number one objective is transparency, right? We want every resident, everybody who's accessing our website to have the same equal access. That's the number one objective. Number two is, tempering or limiting our liability. So if the traffic on older material is very, very little to none, it's probably a needless exposure to leave that old content on the website, because why expose yourself when there's not a high demand or virtually no demand for that? And then we'll be able to still provide that, but through the normal public records request process, through the clerk's office, and then we'll always if there's a specific request for a specific document and it's 5 or 6 years old, we'll pull that document, make it ADA compliant, and then forward it on to the requester.
So if the document is not there, you can retrospectively make it compliant.
Yes.
But you can't do it if the document's there.
It won't be available to them, but it won't be available to anyone. On the website, you just click and find it and click it and find it, boop, and it pops up. It won't be available to anyone that way.
No, I know that, but,
Yeah.
so it's not available to anybody. The only difference is that when you have a document up, the immediacy of it, that it must be, nobody can submit and say, hey, I want this document to be OCR compatible. And then you be given like a 24, 72-hour period. We do it for sign language interpreters, right? So if you want a sign language interpreter at one of our public events, you must make that. You can't just show up and expect a sign language interpreter. They give you a reasonable amount of time so you can coordinate that service, right? I'm just trying to see. It's the same law. It's an ADA compliance, right? It's within the same framework of law. Why can't the OCR request be given that same lead time?
For a public records request?
Somebody with a disability is requesting a document that has not been transcribed OCR. The same way somebody wants a sign language interpreter here.
Yes.
How much time do we give? How
Well,
much time
I think we'll address like any other public records request, which I believe the law says within a reasonable amount of time. So whether it's for somebody who has some disability or somebody who does not, they'll still get it within a reasonable amount of time.
Your question is a good one, and there's a nuance in the law, okay? When you're dealing with electronic media, there's a difference. I'm sorry, the law differentiates when you're dealing with electronic media. For instance, live streaming. Live streaming has to be accessible to not only folks that are watching it, but folks that have special needs. So in other words, we have to provide closed captioning. We can't provide closed captioning a week later. We can't provide closed captioning the day of. It's got to be at the moment. That same law applies to websites. So if we have content available to one person, it's got to be accessible to a person with special needs. It's a little different when you're asking for special accommodation for an event or for a venue or for something. That allows a little bit of lead time and allows you to be able to ask for it. But with regards to electronic media, that's the federal law. Yeah, I don't think it's right, but it is what it is.
So the document is considered immediate?
Yes.
The difference between the accommodation of the sign language interpreter and the document needing to be coded into OCR is that the document must be immediate.
Yeah, so if I have a document available for you, it's got to be available to the person for special needs at the same time. Now, so that's why a lot of cities, not a lot, but some cities are taking the point for some documents to basically say, if you want this document, contact the clerk. Because then it's not accessible to anybody instantaneously. They've got to go through the clerk system. And then the clerk can take her time in making that document accessible to someone with special needs, because now we're not dealing within the realm of electronics or television.
That's weird. So all documents across the board have to be given out at the same time if they are to be
Electronic.
electronic in any way, shape, or form, even for disability.
Yes.
Okay. I'm thinking in regards to the website and the documents I understand, but I also believe that in the website in general, there's different things that could be done to make it more accessible. And simple things, easy things. When someone with a disability just looks, it's kind of like it's welcoming and it's the calling to that person. And it's like, okay, let me go in there and see what's going on. So simple, accommodations available upon request. Inclusive language, colors.
Yes.
Little things like that, because I'm familiar with the gentleman you were speaking about that goes around town and just kind of looking at everything. But things like that, it makes it more accommodating to the individual. So how can we go about starting with those smaller, if you will, changes and accommodations before we go into the big stuff? Because a lot of times we're not really looking, as outsiders, we're not really looking into kind of these things in regards to those documents and things like that. But again, the easy, accessible changes that can be made to the website. Colors is very important. The size in the letters, all those things that right now it's not accessible, but they can begin to be accessible until we get to that point. And it doesn't cost that much money, like we're talking about, for the smaller or the more beginning changes needed for accessibility. So.
Yeah, there is in terms of complexity, maybe doing a brand new website is something that you do once and maybe you skip it. It's not that complex. When you're talking about the documents, all the amount of documents that we generate and the complexity, that's over and over and over. So if you ask me which one is easier, definitely the website is something that, in my opinion, will have a better impact to our residents if we provide a nicer website. The content is something that we need to be remediating and getting better to create those accessible from the get-go. But the website, I would definitely say, would be my step number one. You can improve the text size, the fonts, the structure. Our website is 2012. In terms of technology, that's a dinosaur. Again, the 10 municipalities and even the county, in less than 2-3 years, they redid the whole website. A website that is 5 years old is already too obsolete. If we try to band-aid the website, it's going to cost probably the same amount of money if we go to a brand new one. So definitely trying to fix our website, and we already tried. And just in 1 year later, 250,000 issues. So trying to band-aid that one is definitely won't be the path to follow. My recommendation is let's do a brand new website. And as the Councilman Collazo was mentioning, there are some tools that we can even add right now. Some are free, some are you pay some little money. Are those ADA compliance? No, there are things that are nice to have, help to address some of the issues, but even when I call those vendors. When I spoke to these 10 different cities and counties, the same vendors were more or less popping up all the time. So there's like a handful of vendors that are the really good ones. what they were saying is like, yeah, we can fix that, and that's where the expertise. If you go to the other ones, little gadgets and toolbars, they say like, no, we don't address the ADA compliance. We want to enhance your website, but definitely we are not an ADA. They cover some, but they're like, ADA is another animal that bigger companies deal with. So, but you're absolutely right. There are things in there that we cannot run away. Talking about teamwork and collaboration, when we spoke to all these different cities, Coral Gables, Pinecrest, North Bay, City of Miami, even the county offers a website development projects. So if you want to piggyback from the county, they can help you with. Of course, they charge for that. But but in terms of remediation of the documents, right now everyone is almost on their own trying to figure out how to do it. Some of them, they're having people trained and doing their own remediation. Others are sending this outside. So there is a handful of options but it's not like a common one that I haven't seen through a...
The website is the easy part.
And quite honestly, for me, would be the most impact that we can do would be to get a new website.
The website with the toolbar, with the
Yes.
proper toolbar, you don't have an issue. The problem is the amount. We have agendas that range 400 on the small side to
You're exactly right.
1,000 pages on the heavy side, and that volume, with sometimes when we're talking about land use maps and those types of PDFs, are the issue, right?
Yes.
Large schematics, and I understand that. That's why I'm saying this problem cannot be only to us. There must
no,
be other people that have a
everyone.
so just to, I would go to the League of Cities. The one that we use is called Recite Me. That's the toolbar that we use. I don't know if you've heard of that toolbar.
Yeah, I heard that one. I heard Audio Eye, Read a Speaker. So there are many that, again, there are nice things to have in your website, get you in better position, but again, it's not like, again, there is no pass-fail. It's a spectrum, basically, what you are addressing. It's
Good
so
job.
complex. Thank you. It's
Thank
so
you.
complex that the county, when we talk about the complex documents that cover the budget, they told me it is so complex that right now we know that we are not in compliance, but we cannot remove those. We have to send those out, and then we figure out how we can get those inside. I guess they generate probably 3 times or more the documents that we produce in here. Okay.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our presentation.